Marcus wiped the grease from his hands with an old rag, the familiar smell of engine oil and metal shavings filling his nostrils. The maintenance bay of the starship Celestial Dawn hummed with activity as dozens of mechanics worked on various spacecraft that had docked for repairs. Marcus had been working these bays for 15 years, ever since he left his small farming planet with nothing but a toolbox and determination to make something of himself. The announcement crackled through the intercom system, cutting through the noise of welding torches and hydraulic lifts. All passengers for Transport Flight 7742 to Kepler Station, please report to Bay 12 for boarding. This is a priority evacuation flight. Marcus looked up from the damaged thruster he was repairing. Evacuation flights meant trouble somewhere in the sector. He had booked a seat on that very flight, planning to visit his sister on Kepler Station for the first time in 3 years. The ticket had cost him nearly 2 months' salary, but it was worth it to see family again. He gathered his tools slowly, knowing his shift was ending, and he needed to get to Bay 12 soon. The first-class ticket felt heavy in his chest pocket. Marcus had never flown first class before, but this trip was special. He wanted to arrive at his sister's wedding looking respectable, not like the grease-stained mechanic everyone saw him as. As he walked toward the passenger terminal, Marcus noticed unusual activity in the diplomatic section of the station. Security guards stood at attention, their faces tense. Medical personnel rushed past, carrying specialized equipment he didn't recognize. Something important was happening, but Marcus minded his own business. Station politics weren't his concern. The boarding area for Flight 7742 was packed with anxious passengers. Marcus could see the worry in their faces as they clutched their belongings and spoke in hushed whispers. Through the large viewing window, he could see their transport ship being loaded with supplies and fuel at an urgent pace. "Attention, passengers," the gate agent announced. "Due to the emergency nature of this evacuation, we are experiencing some seating complications. We appreciate your patience as we work through these issues." Marcus found a seat near the back and waited. His first-class ticket guaranteed him priority boarding, and he was looking forward to experiencing the luxury he had only heard about from other passengers. The comfortable seats, the real food instead of ration packs, the personal service. It would be a nice change from his usual cramped quarters in economy class. 20 minutes passed before Marcus noticed the commotion near the boarding gate. A group of medical personnel were carefully wheeling someone toward the gate area. The figure was covered in white medical sheets, but Marcus could see glimpses of what looked like scaled skin underneath. Burn marks covered the visible portions, and the smell of antiseptic couldn't quite mask something else. Something that reminded Marcus of the metallic scent that lingered after lightning strikes. "We need immediate medical transport," one of the doctors was saying urgently to the gate agent. "This patient requires specialized atmospheric controls that only the first-class medical bay can provide." "Every minute counts." The gate agent looked stressed. "Sir, I understand the urgency, but all first-class seats are occupied. This is an evacuation flight, and we simply don't have space for medical equipment and a full treatment setup." Marcus watched as the medical team exchanged worried glances. Through a gap in the sheets, he caught a glimpse of the patient's face. It wasn't human. The features were distinctly draconic: elongated snout, scales that shimmered even through the burn damage, and closed eyes that seemed too large for any human face. This was one of the Drakai, the ancient spacefaring race that had allied with humans only 50 years ago. "Dr. Chen," another medic whispered urgently, "the atmospheric mixture is becoming unstable. If we don't get him into a controlled environment soon, the cellular regeneration will stop completely." Marcus had heard stories about the Drakai and their incredible regenerative abilities. Unlike humans, they could heal from almost any wound, but only under very specific conditions. Their metabolism required a precise balance of gases and pressure that human ships rarely maintained outside of specialized medical facilities. The gate agent was getting frustrated. "Look," I've explained the situation. Every first-class passenger paid premium prices for evacuation priority. I cannot simply ask someone to give up their seat for medical purposes. It's against company policy. You don't understand, Dr. Chen said, his voice rising slightly. This isn't just any Drakai. This is Commander Zephyr of the Third Fleet. He was injured defending the mining colony at Proxima 7. Hundreds of families were able to evacuate because of his sacrifice. He held off 3 enemy ships single-handedly while the civilian transports escaped. Marcus felt something stir in his chest. He had heard the emergency broadcasts about Proxima 7. The mining colony had been attacked by raiders 3 days ago. The report said that all civilians had been safely evacuated, but they hadn't mentioned the cost. The commander's ship took direct hits while protecting the evacuation convoy, the doctor continued. His fighter was barely functional when he finally retreated. Most of his scales were burned away by plasma fire, and his internal systems are failing. Without proper medical attention in the next few hours, even his regenerative abilities won't be enough. The gate agent shook his head. I'm sorry, but policy is policy. Perhaps one of the passengers would volunteer to downgrade, but I cannot force anyone to give up their paid seat. Marcus looked around the boarding area. The first-class passengers sat in their designated area, most of them well-dressed civilians who had paid for evacuation priority. They were business people, minor officials, and wealthy travelers who wanted to ensure their safety during the crisis. None of them seemed to have heard the conversation about the injured Drakai commander. He thought about his sister's wedding, about how he had saved for months to afford this ticket. He thought about finally being able to travel in comfort, to arrive looking like he belonged among respectable people instead of the working-class mechanic he had always been. Then he thought about the stories his grandfather used to tell him about the old wars, before humans and Drakai became allies. His grandfather had been a soldier, and had always taught Marcus that honor meant putting others before yourself when it truly mattered. Marcus stood up and walked to the boarding gate. Excuse me, he said quietly to Dr. Chen. I couldn't help but overhear. I have a first-class seat on this flight. The doctor looked at him hopefully. Sir, if you would consider downgrading to economy class, we could set up the medical equipment in your section. The atmospheric controls there are much more sophisticated. What exactly would the commander need? Marcus asked, glancing at the covered figure on the medical gurney. The first-class cabin has individual atmospheric controls for each pod, Dr. Chen explained quickly. We can adjust the gas mixture, pressure, and humidity to match Drakai physiology. The medical bay there also has neural stimulation equipment that can help accelerate his natural healing process. Marcus pulled out his ticket and looked at it one more time. Seat 3A, premium class, with all the amenities he had dreamed about. His sister would understand, he told himself. She had always taught him to do the right thing, even when it cost him something important. Take my seat, Marcus said, handing the ticket to the gate agent. Move me to economy class. Dr. Chen's eyes widened with relief. Sir, are you certain? This is a significant sacrifice you're making. Commander Zephyr sacrificed more than a comfortable seat to save those families, Marcus replied simply. It's the least I can do. The gate agent quickly processed the seat change while the medical team began preparing to board. As they carefully moved the gurney toward the boarding tunnel, one of the medics stopped beside Marcus. What's your name? She asked. Commander Zephyr should know who helped save his life. Marcus Chen, he said. I'm just a mechanic. Tell him that the human fleet takes care of its allies. As the medical team disappeared into the boarding tunnel, Marcus gathered his small travel bag and prepared to find his new seat in economy class. He tried not to think about the cramped quarters, the stale, recycled air, and the nutrient paste that passed for food in the cheaper sections. Sir, the gate agent called out to him, I want you to know that what you did today will be noted in our flight records. That kind of selflessness is rare. Marcus nodded and headed toward the economy boarding line. The passengers around him were mostly workers like himself, mechanics, miners, and service personnel who had scraped together enough credits for evacuation passage. They looked tired and worried, clutching their few belongings as they prepared for an uncertain journey. As he waited in line, Marcus wondered if he had made the right choice. The ticket had represented months of overtime work and skipped meals. His sister would be disappointed that he couldn't afford wedding clothes now, and he would arrive looking exactly like what he was, a working-class mechanic who couldn't afford luxury. But as the boarding continued and he saw the medical team working frantically to stabilize their patient in the first-class medical bay, Marcus felt a quiet satisfaction. Sometimes doing the right thing meant giving up something important. His grandfather would have been proud. The transport ship's engines hummed to life as the last passengers boarded. Through the small economy-class window, Marcus could see the space station growing smaller as they departed. Somewhere in the front of the ship, Commander Zephyr was fighting for his life while receiving the best medical care available. Marcus closed his eyes and tried to sleep in the uncomfortable economy seat. He didn't know that his simple act of kindness would set in motion events that would change not only his life, but the relationship between humans and Drakai throughout the galaxy. All he knew was that he had done what felt right, and sometimes that had to be enough. The ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying its passengers toward Kepler Station and an uncertain future. In the medical bay, Commander Zephyr's vital signs began to stabilize as the Drakai healing process finally took hold in the carefully controlled atmosphere. The doctors worked through the night, unaware that their patient's keen hearing had caught every word of the conversation that had secured his treatment. Marcus slept fitfully in his cramped seat, dreaming of his sister's wedding and wondering how he would explain his change in circumstances. He had no way of knowing that his sacrifice had been witnessed and remembered by someone whose gratitude would soon reshape his entire world. 3 days had passed since the transport ship arrived at Kepler Station. Marcus had attended his sister Elena's wedding in his work clothes, explaining to concerned family members that he had given up his first-class seat to help an injured soldier. Elena had hugged him tightly, telling him she was proud of his choice, but Marcus could see the disappointment in her eyes. She had wanted him to finally experience something nice, to feel worthy of respect. The wedding reception was modest but warm, held in the community center of the mining district where Elena worked as a nurse. Marcus tried to enjoy himself, but he felt out of place among Elena's new in-laws, who were merchants and skilled professionals. When they asked about his work, their polite smiles couldn't hide their dismissive attitudes toward manual labor. "So you fix spaceships?" Elena's new mother-in-law had asked with barely concealed disdain. "How practical." Marcus had excused himself early, claiming fatigue from the journey. He wandered through the station's commercial district, window shopping and trying not to calculate how long it would take him to save enough credits for another first-class ticket. The displays of expensive clothes and luxury items only reminded him of what he couldn't afford. As he walked past the station's medical center, Marcus noticed unusual activity. Several Drakai in military uniforms were entering and leaving the facility. Their distinctive scales caught the artificial light, creating an almost hypnotic shimmer as they moved. Marcus had seen very few Drakai in person during his life, and their presence here was unexpected. He was about to continue walking when someone called his name. "Marcus Chen?" Marcus turned to see a human woman in a medical uniform approaching him. She looked familiar, and after a moment he recognized her as one of the doctors who had been treating the injured Drakai commander on the transport. "Doctor?" Marcus struggled to remember her name. "Rodriguez," she supplied with a smile. "I was part of Commander Zephyr's medical team. I wanted to thank you again for what you did. Your sacrifice quite literally saved his life." "How is he?" Marcus asked, genuinely curious about the patient he had helped. Dr. Rodriguez's expression brightened. "Recovering remarkably well, actually." The Drakai regenerative process is fascinating to observe. The controlled atmospheric conditions in first class gave his cellular repair systems the boost they needed. He should make a full recovery. That's good to hear, Marcus said, feeling a quiet satisfaction. At least his sacrifice had achieved something meaningful. Actually, Dr. Rodriguez continued, Commander Zephyr has been asking about you. He's quite insistent on meeting the human who gave up his seat. Would you consider visiting him? He's been cleared for limited visitors. Marcus hesitated. I don't think that's necessary. I just did what anyone would do. That's where you're wrong, the doctor said seriously. What you did was extraordinary, and Commander Zephyr wants to express his gratitude personally. In Drakai culture, life debts are taken very seriously. The concept of life debt was something Marcus had heard about, but never fully understood. The Drakai had complex honor codes that governed their society, and apparently saving someone's life created lasting obligations between individuals. I suppose I could spare a few minutes, Marcus said finally. Dr. Rodriguez led him through the medical center's corridors to a specialized wing designed for non-human patients. The atmospheric composition was different here, and Marcus could feel the slight pressure change as they entered the Drakai treatment area. Commander Zephyr's room was larger than standard human accommodations, with higher ceilings and modified lighting that provided the full-spectrum radiation that Drakai needed for optimal health. Medical equipment hummed quietly, monitoring the patient's vital signs and maintaining the precise environmental conditions necessary for healing. The commander was sitting up in bed, and Marcus was struck by how different he looked from the burned figure he had glimpsed on the transport. Zephyr's scales had regenerated to a brilliant bronze color with hints of gold around his facial features. His eyes were large and intelligent, with vertical pupils that reminded Marcus of ancient Earth reptiles. Despite the medical setting, the commander possessed an undeniable dignity and presence. Marcus Chen, Commander Zephyr said, his voice carrying a musical quality that was characteristic of Drakai speech. I have been eager to meet you. Commander, Marcus replied, unsure of the proper protocol. I'm glad to see you're recovering well. Zephyr gestured to a chair beside his bed. Please, sit. I understand that you sacrificed your premium transportation to provide me with medical accommodation. This action requires acknowledgement. Marcus sat down, feeling awkward under the commander's intense gaze. Really, it wasn't a big deal. You were injured protecting civilians. It was the right thing to do. You speak of rightness as if it were simple, Zephyr observed. Yet you gave up something of value without knowing who I was or whether I deserved such sacrifice. This speaks to character that transcends species. I heard you saved hundreds of families at Proxima 7, Marcus said. Seem like a fair trade? Commander Zephyr was quiet for a long moment, studying Marcus with those alien eyes. Tell me about yourself. Marcus Chen? What is your profession? I'm a mechanic, Marcus replied, expecting the usual dismissive response. I work on the maintenance crews for the civilian transport fleet. Instead of dismissal, he saw interest in the commander's expression. You work with starship systems? Which types? All kinds, really. Engines, life support, navigation systems, hull repair, whatever needs fixing. Marcus found himself relaxing as he talked about his work. I've been doing it for 15 years now. Impressive, Zephyr said, and Marcus could tell he meant it. Mechanical expertise is highly valued among my people. Our ships are biological mechanical hybrids that require constant care and understanding. A skilled mechanic is worth more than many warriors. This was not the reaction Marcus was used to receiving when he discussed his profession. Most people saw mechanics as necessary but unimportant, blue-collar workers who fixed things but didn't create anything significant. The attack at Proxima 7 damaged my personal fighter severely, Commander Zephyr continued. The integration between biological and mechanical systems was disrupted. Your human technicians have struggled to understand the repair requirements. Marcus felt a spark of professional interest. What kind of integration problems? The neural interface systems that allow direct pilot control have been severed, Zephyr explained. Human technology focuses on manual controls and computer assistance. Drakai ships respond to bioelectric signals from the pilot's nervous system. The connection points were burned away during the battle. Bioelectric interfaces, Marcus mused. That's fascinating. I've never worked on anything like that, but the principles might be similar to neural link systems for prosthetics. Commander Zephyr leaned forward slightly. You understand such systems? A little, Marcus admitted. I've done some work on medical equipment and prosthetic interfaces. The basic idea is creating a stable connection between biological neural activity and mechanical systems. Perhaps you would examine my fighter, Zephyr asked. Your human repair teams have been cautious in their approach. They fear damaging systems they do not understand. Marcus was intrigued despite himself. I don't have any experience with Drakai technology. But you have instincts for mechanical systems, and you have proven yourself trustworthy, Zephyr replied. Among my people, we believe that understanding flows from character as much as knowledge. The next morning, Marcus found himself in a restricted section of the station's shipyard, standing before the most beautiful and alien spacecraft he had ever seen. Commander Zephyr's fighter was unlike anything in the human fleet. The hull seemed to pulse with a faint inner light, and the surface had an organic quality that suggested growth rather than construction. Incredible, Marcus whispered, running his hand along the smooth surface. The material felt warm and seemed to respond to his touch with subtle color changes. The hull is grown from modified coral organisms, Zephyr explained. He had been cleared for limited activity and had insisted on accompanying Marcus to examine the ship. The mechanical components are integrated during the growth process, creating a seamless fusion of biology and technology. Marcus could see the damage clearly now. Plasma burns had carved deep gouges into the hull, severing what looked like neural pathways that glowed faintly beneath the surface. Traditional repair methods would never work on something like this. The biological components need to regenerate the connections naturally, Marcus observed, but they need mechanical support and guidance to grow in the right patterns. Exactly, Zephyr said, impressed by Marcus's quick understanding. But your repair teams want to replace the damaged sections with standard mechanical interfaces. Marcus circled the ship slowly, studying the damage patterns and the remaining intact systems. An idea was forming in his mind, based on techniques he had used to repair complex neural networks in medical equipment. What if we don't replace anything? He suggested. What if we create temporary bridge connections that guide the biological regeneration, like medical scaffolding for broken bones? Zephyr's eyes widened. Scaffolding? Yes, that could work. But it would require understanding both the biological growth patterns and the mechanical interface requirements. I'd need to learn about Drakai biotechnology, Marcus said, his mind already racing with possibilities. But the mechanical principles should be universal. I could teach you, Zephyr offered. My people have extensive technical knowledge about our ship systems. If you are willing to learn, I am willing to share. Over the following days, Marcus found himself immersed in the most fascinating work of his career. Commander Zephyr proved to be an excellent teacher, explaining the complex interactions between biological and mechanical systems that made Drakai technology so effective. The repair work was unlike anything Marcus had ever attempted. Instead of simply replacing broken parts, they were encouraging living systems to grow back in specific patterns while providing mechanical support and guidance. It required patience, precision, and an intuitive understanding of how organic and artificial systems could work together. Your species has an interesting approach to technology, Zephyr observed as they worked together in the ship's neural interface chamber. Humans tend to dominate their machines, forcing them to obey commands. We prefer partnership, where pilot and ship work as a unified organism. That's why human ships need so many backup systems, Marcus realized. We don't trust our technology to work with us, so we build redundancy in case it fails. While we trust our ships completely, but must maintain the biological components carefully, Zephyr agreed. Each approach has advantages. As they worked, Marcus found himself learning more than just technical knowledge. Zephyr shared stories of Drakai culture, their history of spaceflight that spanned millennia, and their philosophy of harmony between different forms of life. In return, Marcus talked about human engineering principles, the resourcefulness born of working with limited resources, and the human drive to explore and adapt. Your sacrifice on the transport was not random kindness, Zephyr said one evening as they calibrated the regenerated neural pathways. It reflected the human capacity for rapid moral decision-making. My people deliberate extensively before taking action. You saw a need and responded immediately. Maybe I just didn't think it through, Marcus suggested. No, Zephyr said firmly. You thought with your heart instead of your mind. That is a valuable form of intelligence. The repair work took 2 weeks to complete. As the final biological connections regenerated and integrated with Marcus's carefully designed mechanical supports, the ship's systems came back online, one by one. When the neural interface finally activated, responding to Zephyr's bioelectric patterns, both the commander and Marcus felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The integration is perfect, Zephyr said, his eyes glowing with satisfaction as he connected mentally with his ship. Better than it was before the damage. Your scaffolding technique has created stronger pathways. Marcus wiped his hands on a rag, a gesture that had become automatic after years of mechanical work. It was an honor to work on something so elegant. I've never seen technology that truly lives before. Commander Zephyr disconnected from the ship's systems and turned to face Marcus directly. You have given me back not just my fighter, but my ability to serve my people effectively. The life debt I owed you has grown into something deeper. What do you mean? Marcus asked. Among the Drakai, when someone saves your life and then enhances your ability to live that life more fully, they become what we call a wing brother, Zephyr explained. It is a bond of mutual support that transcends species barriers. Marcus wasn't sure what that meant practically, but he could sense the importance of what Zephyr was offering. I'm honored by your friendship, Commander. It is more than friendship, Zephyr said seriously. It is recognition that our paths are now connected. What affects one of us affects both. As they secured the ship and prepared to leave the maintenance bay, Marcus felt a strange sense of completion. He had started this journey as a simple mechanic trying to attend his sister's wedding in comfort. Instead, he had discovered capabilities he never knew he possessed and formed a connection with someone from an entirely different species. He didn't yet realize that their wing-brother bond was about to open doors he had never imagined, or that his reputation was already spreading through the Drakai fleet as the human mechanic who could bridge the gap between biological and mechanical systems. The quiet satisfaction he felt at completing a challenging repair job was about to transform into something that would change the course of his entire life. 6 months had passed since Marcus returned from Kepler Station, and life had settled into a routine that felt both familiar and strange. He was back in the maintenance bays of the Celestial Dawn, but something fundamental had changed. The other mechanics treated him differently now, with a respect that went beyond his technical skills. Word had spread about his work on Commander Zephyr's fighter, and suddenly Marcus found himself consulted on the most challenging repair jobs. The change became official when Station Administrator Chen, no relation, despite the shared surname, called Marcus to his office on a Tuesday morning. Marcus had never been summoned to the administrative levels before, and he felt nervous as he rode the lift to the executive section. Marcus, Administrator Chen said, gesturing to a chair across from his imposing desk. I have some unusual requests to discuss with you. Requests, sir? 3 separate Drakai commanders have specifically asked for you to work on their ships, the administrator explained, sliding a data pad across the desk. These aren't routine maintenance jobs. They're requesting complete biotechnology integration overhauls. Marcus looked at the work orders with amazement. Each job was worth more in fees than he typically earned in 6 months. The Drakai weren't just asking for repairs. They wanted him to upgrade their ship's biological mechanical interfaces using the techniques he had developed with Commander Zephyr. Sir, I'm honored by the requests, but I don't have official certification for advanced biotechnology work, Marcus said honestly. Administrator Chen smiled. That's being remedied. The Drakai Defense Council has formally requested that you be granted special technical status as a cross-species system specialist. They're willing to sponsor your advanced training. Marcus stared at the datapad, unable to fully process what he was hearing. What exactly does that mean? It means you would become one of the first humans certified to work on Drakai biotechnology systems, the administrator explained. The training would take place aboard a Drakai research vessel, working directly with their finest engineers and biotechnicians. Upon completion, you would be qualified to work on any Drakai military or civilian vessel in the fleet. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just a career change, it was an opportunity to become a bridge between 2 different technological philosophies. Marcus thought about all the years he had spent fixing the same types of human ships, wondering if he would ever do anything more significant than replacing worn parts and calibrating standard systems. There's one more thing, Administrator Chen continued. Commander Zephyr has personally recommended you for assignment to the Joint Human Drakai Research Project at Tau Ceti Station. They're developing new hybrid technologies that could revolutionize space travel for both species. Marcus felt dizzy. Tau Ceti Station was legendary among engineers and mechanics. It was where the most advanced research in the galaxy took place, where the brightest minds worked on problems that could change the future of civilization. I don't understand why they would want me, Marcus said. I'm just a maintenance mechanic. No, Administrator Chen replied firmly. You're the human who saved Commander Zephyr's life and then proved capable of learning Drakai biotechnology well enough to improve it. You're exactly what they need for this project. That evening, Marcus called his sister Elena to share the incredible news. Her excitement was immediate and infectious. Marcus, this is amazing, she exclaimed over the video connection. Do you realize what an opportunity this is? I'm trying to wrap my head around it, Marcus admitted. Part of me thinks I should just stay here where I know what I'm doing. Absolutely not, Elena said firmly. You gave up your first-class seat to help someone and look what it led to. This is the universe telling you that kindness and skill are a powerful combination. What if I fail? What if I'm not smart enough for this level of work? Elena's expression softened. Marcus, you've been underestimating yourself your entire life. You have gifts that people like Commander Zephyr can see, even if you can't. Trust their judgment. The conversation continued for an hour, with Elena helping Marcus work through his fears and uncertainties. By the end, he had made his decision. He would accept the training opportunity and see where this unexpected path would lead. The Drakai research vessel, Harmony's Edge, was unlike any ship Marcus had ever seen. It was massive, with flowing organic lines that suggested growth rather than construction. The hull pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that served as both decoration and functional displays of the ship's status. Commander Zephyr met Marcus at the docking port personally, a gesture that the other Drakai crew members clearly found significant. Marcus had learned enough about Drakai culture to understand that high-ranking officers didn't typically greet individual visitors, especially humans. "Welcome aboard, Wing Brother," Zephyr said, using the formal greeting that acknowledged their bond. "I am pleased that you accepted this opportunity." The next 6 months were the most challenging and rewarding of Marcus's life. The Drakai approach to teaching was immersive and holistic. Instead of learning about biotechnology systems in isolation, Marcus was taught to understand them as part of living ecosystems that included the ship, the crew, and even the space environment around them. His instructor was Chief Biotechnician Reef, an elderly Drakai whose scales had faded to silver with age, but whose knowledge was encyclopedic. Reef had been working with biological-mechanical integration for over 2 centuries, and her patience with Marcus's human limitations was remarkable. "Your species thinks in straight lines," she observed one day as Marcus struggled with a complex neural network calibration. "You see beginning, middle, end. Biological systems think in circles: growth, adaptation, renewal. Try feeling the rhythm instead of forcing the sequence." Gradually, Marcus began to understand what she meant. Drakai technology wasn't about controlling biological systems, but about partnering with them. Instead of imposing human logic on living machines, he learned to work with their natural patterns and instincts. The breakthrough came during his 4th month aboard the ship. Marcus was working on a prototype hybrid engine that combined human fusion technology with Drakai biological neural networks. Previous attempts by human engineers had failed because they tried to make the biological components behave like mechanical ones. Marcus approached the problem differently. Instead of forcing the neural networks to process data like computers, he designed interfaces that allowed them to process information in their natural patterns while still achieving the necessary results. The biological components could function according to their evolved instincts, while the mechanical systems provided structure and support. When the hybrid engine came online for the first time, it performed 30% more efficiently than either pure human or pure Drakai technology. The biological neural networks optimized the fusion reactions in real time, while the mechanical components provided the stability and precision that biological systems sometimes lacked. "Remarkable," Chief Biotechnician Reef said as they reviewed the performance data. "You have achieved true synthesis, not human technology with biological additions, and not Drakai biotechnology with mechanical supplements, something entirely new." The success of the hybrid engine led to Marcus being assigned to the primary research team at Tau Ceti Station. When the Harmony's Edge arrived at the station, Marcus found himself among the most advanced researchers from dozens of species, all working together to push the boundaries of what was possible. Commander Zephyr took him on a tour of the massive research facility, pointing out laboratories where teams worked on everything from faster-than-light communication to terraforming technologies that could transform dead worlds into garden planets. "This is where you belong now," Zephyr told him, as they stood in the observation deck looking out at the experimental shipyard, where prototype vessels tested revolutionary designs. "Your ability to bridge different approaches to technology is exactly what projects like these require." Marcus watched as the experimental ship that seemed to be part machine, part creature, and part something entirely new moved through its first test flight. The vessel responded to its pilot's commands with an organic grace that no purely mechanical craft could achieve, while demonstrating precision and power that biological systems alone could never match. "A year ago, I was fixing broken thrusters and calibrating navigation systems," Marcus said quietly. "Now I'm working on technology that could change how entire civilizations travel through space." "A year ago, you made a choice that revealed your character," Zephyr replied. "Everything that followed was simply the universe recognizing what was already true about you." The research project at Tau Ceti Station lasted 3 years. Marcus worked with teams that included not just humans and Drakai, but representatives from 12 different species, each bringing their own technological approaches and philosophical perspectives. He learned to think in ways that transcended human limitations, while contributing insights that only his unique background could provide. The final result was a new class of starship that incorporated the best aspects of biological and mechanical technology. These hybrid vessels could repair themselves, adapt to new environments, and form neural connections with their crews that allowed for unprecedented levels of coordination and efficiency. But perhaps more importantly, the project established protocols for technological cooperation between species that had previously been impossible. Marcus's ability to understand and translate between different approaches to engineering became a model for future collaborative efforts. When the project concluded, Marcus faced another choice. He could return to his old life as a maintenance mechanic, armed with advanced skills that would make him one of the most sought-after technicians in human space. Or he could accept the position he was offered as Director of Cross-Species Engineering Development, overseeing similar projects throughout the galaxy. The decision was easier than he expected. Marcus had discovered that his true calling wasn't just fixing broken things, but creating new possibilities by bringing different perspectives together. The shy mechanic who had given up his first-class seat to help an injured stranger had evolved into someone who could bridge gaps between entire civilizations. 5 years after that fateful flight to Kepler Station, Marcus stood in the docking bay of the newest hybrid research vessel, watching as human and Drakai crew members worked side by side to prepare for a mission to establish the first truly integrated colony world. The ship itself was a testament to what could be achieved when different forms of intelligence worked in harmony. Commander Zephyr, now promoted to Admiral, approached him as the final preparations were completed. "The wing-brother bond we formed has grown into something neither of us could have anticipated," he observed. "You were right about paths being connected," Marcus replied. "I just never imagined where they would lead." "Nor I," Zephyr admitted. "Your simple act of kindness created ripples that are still spreading. This colony mission will establish a world where humans and Drakai live and work together as equals. Future generations will benefit from the harmony you helped make possible." Marcus looked around the bustling docking bay, where representatives from dozens of species worked together on projects that would have been impossible just a few years earlier. Engineers who might never have met were sharing knowledge and developing technologies that could benefit every world in the Alliance. "Sometimes I think about that moment on the transport," Marcus said. "If I had kept my first-class seat, none of this would have happened." "Perhaps," Zephyr replied. "Or perhaps the universe would have found another way to bring together the right people at the right time. What matters is that when the moment came, you chose compassion over comfort. That choice revealed the person you truly were and allowed you to become the person you were meant to be." The hybrid vessel. New Dawn departed Tau Ceti Station the following morning, carrying a carefully selected crew of colonists toward a distant star system where they would attempt to build a society that truly integrated the best aspects of multiple civilizations. Marcus stood on the bridge, no longer a passenger or even a crew member, but as the chief integration officer responsible for ensuring that all the ship's various biological and mechanical systems worked in perfect harmony. As the ship entered hyperspace, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought him here. A simple act of kindness had opened doors he never knew existed, leading him from the maintenance bays of a transport station to the cutting edge of galactic civilization. He had learned that the universe often rewards those who put others' needs before their own, not through divine intervention, but through the networks of connection and gratitude that bind all intelligent life together. The mechanic who had once thought his greatest achievement would be fixing engines efficiently enough to avoid notice had become someone who helped repair the gaps between entire species. And as the New Dawn carried its precious cargo toward humanity's future, Marcus knew that his greatest adventures were still ahead.